Nope, it's perfect, man. Yeah, I am here, everyone, with Tal Bachman a second time. Tal, appreciate coming back on the podcast, man.
Thanks for having me. Nice to
Yeah,
see you again.
absolutely, man. So our last interview last year, almost to the day, as a matter of fact, got a lot of rave reviews on the comments thread and on my podcast. It was may have been the most acclaimed
Cool.
podcast we've done. Yeah, so wanted to thank you once again
Cool.
for taking the time for me on that one, man.
My
And
pleasure.
yes, sir. And if I had one regret, Tal, I think from our last interview, I think it's that I didn't
Mhm.
ask you what you were currently working on. And I want to abuse my power as an interviewer now, Tal, and correct that. What have you been working on since I last saw you?
I've just been pining for the day we can chat again.
I like that.
I cry myself to sleep. I no, I well, I've been well. It's been a weird year, right? But one of the things that has been going on that has been pretty cool is I've been trying to put together songs with my dad for a father-son album. So we have written a few songs together, which you know has been fun. It can sometimes be a little bit of a challenge, but we've done that and we've demoed them like you do a rough recording called a demo or a demonstration recording. So we've done a few of those and we've been casting it about for somebody to kind of help us put the album together in the studio. I mean, both of us can play a lot and we have a lot of ideas and I mean, like my dad obviously plays guitar. I play guitar and other instruments and stuff. But it's nice to have a sort of I suppose a keel or something to kind of keep things stable and on track. And so we've been looking around for a kind of producer, co-producer to kind of help us put that together in the studio. And I don't think I can. We did actually find a really great guy, and we're really excited about it. But we haven't done the deal, so I can't really tell you any more about it. But next time,
Next
ideally,
time.
the deal will be done, and I can tell you. So we've been doing that. I've been writing my own songs for that project. He's been writing his own songs for that project. We've been kind of digging into our own archives to try to find songs that might be suitable for that project. And like I said, co-written. So that's one thing I've been doing.
Very cool, man. Awesome. And yeah, I'd love to hear a bit about train wrecks. Actually, I was watching your guys's. I think it was your 50th episode. It was just a few days ago. You guys started with
Yeah,
you guys started with one of my favorite songs, "Country Road."
Country Roads. Yeah,
Take me home. Sorry, give you a song there.
right.
But yeah, how's Trainwreck's
You can
been?
sing it. Okay,
I dabble. I do a little.
it's been fun. Yeah, it's been fun. I mean, for those of your viewers or listeners that don't know, my dad and I had we just started doing this thing on YouTube on Friday nights where we sit around and play songs that we like, cover songs. And I mean, I think you would agree that we're pretty bad at it, but it's been a fun thing to do. And I mean, I will say, I mean, this wasn't the new realization for me, but it's now always present in my mind. I mean, I knew this before, but
Hmm.
there's a real skill to being a great cover artist. Like the
Sure.
guys, you take them for, people take them for granted. It's, oh yeah, it's a bar band, it's a cover band or whatever. I mean, it's like a real skill set to be able to just have the mental discipline. Well, first of all, to have the mental acuity to learn all of the parts. Because I'm sorry if I'm rambling here. I
No, man.
probably like last time I don't remember. Okay, but since we're here, I guess the whole point is rambling, right?
Exactly.
Um, um, I can't remember what I was rambling about now, but well, I mean, okay. So the first thing is like you want to learn one of your favorite songs, whatever. I mean, luckily, most big pop, rock and roll songs are pretty simple, but not all of them are simple. Some of them have little twists and turns, and they have cool little chords, or sometimes they have unique kind of chord voicings or inversions where the bass is not necessarily, for example, playing the root of the chord, and you sometimes get chord voicings or inversions that are really quite crucial to the song. So you really have to kind of get those nailed.
Mm-hmm.
Steely Dan songs are like that, for example. They're quite precise in the way they voice some of their chords or whatever. And if you're trying to learn one of those songs, you're really in trouble if you start relying on these internet geeks that purport to lay out how to play, they say, learn how to play the thing. I mean, 'cause sometimes, like, for to save time or whatever, I'll click on some of these things and I'm like, oh, it's kind of a weird chord, or what the heck is that thing? And I wouldn't say they're always wrong, but I would say a good 80-85% of these guys, it's I mean I it's just embarrassing. It's infuriating because
Hmm.
they're wrong, and you get these sort of like basement, music warrior guys that just they're just so smug and arrogant. It's like, let me show you how to play this. Okay, I've been playing. It's like they got the bios. It's like I have over 20 years of experience playing songs. Da, 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 da. This is, and they're just wrong so often. So I think where I was going is, so it's a skill to be able to kind of hear the song in the first place and learn it, because you
Sure.
can't, as I said, you can't necessarily rely on these geeks on the internet that claim to know exactly how to play some of these songs. You get it all wrong, and then it's a skill, honestly, to just develop the mental discipline to play them the same way every night. I
Oh,
mean,
sure.
that's kind of, for me, tough. That's tough, like to really just replicate them. It's like being an actor, right? And you're not doing improv. You've learned the lines to a stage play, and you got to get out there, and it's you can't freestyle in it when you're really doing an awesome cover band. I mean, unless, I guess, you're just absolutely spectacular. But anyway, I'm kind of rambling. The point is that we really don't have any of those skill sets. Well, I mean, we have the skill set to kind of learn them, but not to really learn them with any fidelity, or I don't know even how to put it. I mean, it's not like we don't reverence these songs, but there's just something, certainly in my dad, and I guess to an extent with me, where you kind of can't not freestyle. So between freestyling and not really caring, loving the song, but not really caring all that much about a faithful reproduction, because we're not getting paid for doing these shows,
Right.
um, right? I mean, it ends up, well, that's why we call them the Friday night train wrecks, because you know there's a lot of train wrecks. Just things
Uh,
fall apart sometimes.
that's
People are
cool about
playing
it though,
wrong
right?
chords.
I mean, that's part of
Well,
it. That's where the gold is
sometimes it's fun.
sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's fun or it's funny. I mean, sometimes it. I mean, there's been a few things where I'm trying to think of how far I can go here in this podcast, how much I can reveal. I mean, there's been a few times when, I mean, you have a famous song and it's got a fairly simple chord progression, and I want to play that simple chord progression if it's a big song. I mean, unless, okay, Dad. Gee, who am I talking about? Unless Dad or I can come up with like a new chord that's not one of the four chords that goes over and over and over again
Right.
on the original song, just play the four chords. And so we've had a few times where a major chord was missed every time, and that really actually kind of bothered me. But like I said, we're not getting paid, and it's not like I'm going to complain about it or anything. It's just kind of fun time with me and Dad. So,
Hey, nothing wrong with that, man. No, I've been enjoying them a lot.
but
So yeah, with that in mind, then Tal, kind of rolling the clock back a little bit. On the very off chance that some of our listeners don't know who your father is, I think I do want to ask you who is your dad, and how has he inspired you yourself as a musician?
well, my dad is Randy Bachman. He co-founded the '60s band The Guess Who, which came out of Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, and had lots of hits, not only in Canada but in America and all around the world. Um, American Woman, These Eyes, another song called Undone, another song called No Time. What else? No Sugar Tonight was another hit. You hear them on oldie stations all the time, all over the place. And then in the 70s, he started a band called Bachman Turner Overdrive, or BTO, and they had hits like You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet and Taking Care of Business and Roll On Down the Highway and Let It Ride and Blue Collar and another song called Hey You. And so they had a bunch of hits. So that's who my dad is. And, my dad wasn't around a ton when I was really little. Those were in the days where, when my dad was going with BTO, it was pre-MTV. I don't even know if they ever made a proper video because, this was a long time ago. Music videos were not even really a thing. Some bands would do them. Queen did one for Bohemian Rhapsody. Kiss did one for Beth, which you can watch on YouTube. It's funny. But I don't think my dad ever did them because they just weren't a thing. So he was out on the road. Even, like a luxury like this, like where you're talking to, I don't know how many people would listen, but let's say it's 1,000, 10,000. We don't know. I don't know. I don't even know what it is. Not like I care. But if you were to hit like, 100,000 or something. I wonder how many people Joe Rogan has. He must have millions.
Oh, he's got millions.
You're sitting in a studio. Yeah, there's millions, right? So you're sitting in a studio promoting your product to, potentially millions upon millions of people, and you're in your living room, your bedroom or something, as opposed to like my dad, like piling into a van with these guys with like cans of tuna and loaves of Wonder Bread, and like, you got to spend 280, 300 days on the road. So that's what it was like when I was a little kid. So we didn't see him a ton. But we saw him sometimes, and when he left BTO, of course, he was around a lot more, and I was like maybe 10 or 11 when that happened. So, just as a result of that, I was around a lot of music. We had music, we had musical instruments all over the house. He was always talking about music. My dad's very obsessive. All he really thinks about is music. So when you ask about influence, I think that's kind of the main thing.
Sure.
It'd be like growing up in a house and one or both of your parents spoke Spanish all the time. You just learn how to speak Spanish. So that's kind of what it was like.
Cool. Awesome, man. So then getting back to like kind of the beginning of your career, let me know if oh, hey, Mark, our screen's, sorry, Tal, one sec. Our screen just went black, the monitor here. Just keep going. There we go. All right, I'm back. In 3, 2, 1. Sorry about that. So correct me if I'm wrong on this, but if I'm not mistaken, you were discovered when executives from EMI Publishing heard a demo tape that you had made way back in the day. And this we discussed this.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yes, sir. We discussed this in our last interview. That led to the record deal with Columbia Records. And yes, sir. My question is going to take two forms. So the first is going to be, can you recall what you recorded on that demo tape? And then two, I'd love to know what it was like. You're a young musician, singer-songwriter, looking to actually realizing the dream, right? I'd love to know kind of what that experience was like.
Well, I got married young, and I started, just to back up a little bit, my mother was a devout member of a religion when my father met her, and he then converted to that religion in order to marry her. And I've wondered since if there would have been any religion that my father would not have instantly joined in order to marry my mother. I wonder now, like, if my mother had said, like, by the way, I'm a Satanist, if he'd have been like, okay, great, okay, whatever, sure. Every religion's the same. It doesn't matter. Sure, I'll worship Satan. I don't really know, but that's not the impression I had when I was a kid, but in conversations since, it has kind of seemed, from him, kind of, what difference does it make? Catholic, whatever. So anyway, they get married. So we kind of grow up, all the kids as devout believing members of this religion, and as a result of that, I believed, coming out of high school, and then for a while after that, I mean, I had an obligation to get married and start having kids. So long story short is I got married young. I started having kids that I was really not prepared to support. I was prepared to father because I'd been around little kids my whole life, and I'm the oldest of six, but I wasn't necessarily prepared to economically support two of us, and then two plus a baby, three, and then like a second child, and then a third child. Now that's five, and there's like one like incompetent, 24-year-old me trying to support, 25 and I mean, it's just a lot. So what I'm saying is like, I was really freaked out, because I kept writing songs, I kept demoing songs, I kept sending them out, and they kept getting rejected. Everybody rejected them. People think mistakenly that just because your daddy or your uncle or your granddad or your second cousin or something once played bass in Grand Funk Railroad or something, that everybody in the music business gives you a record deal or something. And it's not like that at all. In fact, if anything, it seems to kind of bias them against you, right?
Sure.
Like if like,
Is it
I'm
because
just thinking like if you, what?
yeah, is it
Sorry, there's an
because they're
airplane flying
expecting
overhead, but
they're
no.
expect sorry? Oh.
Oh, I'm just hoping that there's not leakage because there's a helicopter flying by here.
Oh,
I'm
gotcha.
outside in my little
Little
flower
greenhouse.
hothouse. Yeah, little greenhouse.
Um
Anyway, yeah. Sorry, what?
yeah, I was going to say, is it a situation where they have a preconceived notion of who you are and what you should be because they know who your father is, and then that works against you? Is it something like that?
Yeah, well, it seemed to be two different things. Like in Canada, so in Canada, small country, tenth the size of the United States in population. My dad was in the first band that ever made it big out of Canada. They kind of conquered the world. American Woman was a number one hit. So, I
Yeah.
mean, you're like not the hometown hero, you're the home national hero. And then he was the second one to do it because he conquered the world with BTO,
That's wild.
right? So, so in Canada, um, Daddy was a big deal, but you get all of these guys that are running like the Canadian music industry, and then they hear that like Randy has a child that also wants to be a musician, and your first thought is, I can't say that I entirely blame him. How good can he be? The son is never as good as the dad, and look at what the dad accomplished. This kid's like probably a loser. And in addition to that, I think, I think it's true. That's, that a lot of these guys derive the kind of pleasure from being able to say no to Randy Bachman's kid. Yeah, I got a demo tape from Randy Bachman's kid. I threw it in the garbage can. It was gonna, So I think there was but that's not to say that my songs were all that great. And of course, I don't need to leave that out. Maybe they weren't that great. All I know is that I got rejected by everybody in Canada, and in America, the American companies, they don't care. They never cared that my dad was in BTO or the Guess Who.
Huh.
Nobody cared. It was the opposite. It's not that they didn't like the song. It's just that it wouldn't occur to a titan of the music biz running a major record label in Los Angeles or New York City to sign somebody just because his daddy had been in a famous band 25 years, 30, 35 years earlier. It just
Interesting.
never would have occurred to them. Not least because
Yeah.
at the record companies, there's all kinds of people working at the record companies and doing all kinds of things that did have relatives that were in big famous bands. So it's not really that uncommon. You can meet a secretary and it's like, oh, wow, that's cool. My dad, was in Creedence Clearwater Revival, or my dad, my uncle was the drummer for whatever, Seals and Crofts, or whatever, 70s bands or whatever. So it was not
Sure.
that big of a deal. I would have happily taken a deal even if I had known that I was only getting the deal because people like my dad. So because I was so desperate, because I had mouths to feed, because new babies were coming, and I like I said, I felt obligated, I believed that I was doing the right thing, that I bringing children into the world at that rapid pace. It was like hillbillies or something. It's like every spring, mama has a new baby. Mama's coming down from the holler again. She had her new baby, like that. So it's like little kids, like 5 years old, 4 years old, 3 years old, 2 years old, 1 year. But so anyway, so to answer your question about what that was like, I was freaked out. Like daddy's not going to support me. There's no trust fund thing or anything. And I bet everything on, making it as a musician. Everyone rejected me. Everyone in Canada, everyone in America. And I also got, I mean, the rejections fall into like three categories, I guess. You either never hear anything back, or you get a polite pass, and every once in a while you get a guy who again seems to derive pleasure from really needling you and stomping you. And so
Sounds like my dating life, Tal.
Well, really, okay. Well, that might be a different podcast.
Yeah.
I
Go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, I did end up coming up with all sorts of ways of tricking girls into liking you, but that's a different podcast. But yeah, so I was totally freaked out. I couldn't quite hear why, what might be wrong with my songs. I didn't know if people were even listening to them. I knew that they were saying no. And I wasn't really getting constructive feedback for the most part. Like, this song is a 7.8 out of 10. But I need it to be at least an 8.7 or a 9 out of 10, and here's what you can do to punch it up. I mean, you don't get that kind of feedback. That's not their job even, right? So
sure.
So I was kind of operating blind, and then what actually happened was one day I was playing drums in my dad's band at the time to try to make ends meet. Not that he was paying a whole lot at the time. His career was kind of in a trough at the time. It's always up and down, feast or famine in the music biz. So I was kind of just barely coasting by, and we were in Calgary, Alberta one day playing a show, and I went back to my hotel room and I started listening to the Bends, that Radiohead record. Have you ever heard that?
No, I haven't.
Okay, well, have you heard OK Computer?
I've heard the name. I can't say I've heard it.
Okay, well, you gotta listen to these albums.
Roger.
Okay, you've heard Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd, right?
Hell yeah, yeah.
Okay, so if you like Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd, I mean, I've listened to that record like 8 billion times, right? I can still listen to it and really enjoy it. But if you like that, you'll really like Radiohead's OK Computer. And the album before OK Computer was called The Bends, Bends, okay? And so there were a couple of songs on that album, like that I thought, man, it's in some ways it's a bit of a kind of roughly recorded record. It's not super polished, and some of the performances are a little ragged, but it's some really, really great stuff. And I just thought, man, I think I could put a couple of these songs together and kind of come up with my own, maybe it's kind of simple song that captures a little bit of that ethereal magic that I'm hearing in these Radiohead songs. And so I wrote a song called If You Sleep. That was pretty simple. It was just 3 chords through most of the song, and then I just thought, okay, well, I'll put another couple of chords in on a kind of a bridge that I just solo over. So I just call it a solo bridge. And I did a very, very rough recording of that song, and I threw maybe 3 or 4 other songs that I'd kind of written onto that same tape. It was a cassette tape. It was like late 90s. And then we sent it all around to like 3 or 4 dozen people. And one of those tapes fell into the hands of a guy in LA. One of his buddies heard it, a lady. That young lady sent it to her friend at EMI Music Publishing in New York. And they really liked the song If You Sleep. That was my deal-getter song. And that was the song that Columbia Records thought was going to be the giant hit off of that album. And as it happened, She's So High, which was supposed to be like the setup track. They called it. This She's So High. The idea was that She's So High would come out and prep the waters, right? Chum the waters, and it would kind of like put me on the radar screen, and then they would come with like the big friggin' sledgehammer, like the power ballad "If You Sleep." And as it happened, She's So High got played for like a year or something on like different formats, which was rare and awesome. But they won't play a sec. So the radio stations won't play a second song. They won't put a second song from the same artist into heavy rotation, right? They kind of take it one song at a time. So
Sure.
so so Columbia Records couldn't really come with "If You Sleep" because they were all still playing "She's So High," and partly as a result of that, I didn't really break as an artist. The song broke, but you kind of need to get into your second, third single to really break as an artist, to become bigger than the song.
Sure.
And right, so anyway, I'm kind of rambling, but that's kind of what it was like. "She's So High" came out, it was a hit, and that was fun. But it would have been nice to have a couple more.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome, man. Well, one thing I did want to talk about, obviously you performed in front of huge crowds, tens of thousands of people. I know you played "She's So High," speaking of, with Taylor Swift actually a couple years back on stage. Saw that prepping for this interview.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a blast to
Yeah.
watch. I'm curious, this may sound like an odd question because you've been performing your entire life, but do you ever get nervous when you go on stage?
Well, I get butterflies. That's a good question. Short answer is it depends. Like when I play with my dad, so like, okay, like I've been playing guitar in my dad's band. That's been kind of fun for like the last few years.
Sure.
It's like I said, I played drums for him. Okay, so like when I was playing drums for my dad in the '90s, didn't get nervous at all. Like, what is there to get nervous over, right? I know all the songs, I can play everything. It's not like I'm going to forget how to play drums or something. And now when I go out there and I'm playing guitar and I play keyboards and stuff on stage, kind of a utility guy, I'm not really nervous either because the demands on me are not great. My dad's singing a lot of the songs. The bass player, the other guy, very good singer. He sings a bunch of the other songs. I'm one of 5 people on stage, and 3 of us are, I'm either playing, there's 2 guitarists and then me, so I'm either playing a third guitar part or I'm playing piano. So what I'm trying to say is, the demands on me are not great.
Sure.
I'm just like an ensemble player. But yeah, it can get nerve-wracking if I'm doing an entire show, a solo show, only because it's difficult to remember that many words for me. Like you gotta remember lyrics for like 12 or 14 songs or something. So I often will have cheat sheets on my, on the floor, and then, you might kind of struggle to hit some of the notes because you're singing all the songs. So I guess it depends. I guess I can get sort of a little nervous about forgetting lyrics, but
Gotcha.
there are worse jobs, right?
I know, right? Yeah, I interviewed actually Fight for Fighting a few weeks ago. That was pretty cool. And he,
Really?
yeah. He's no Tal Bachman, but it was still pretty cool, right? Oh, can you hear me, Tal? Tal, can you hear me, bud?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you.
There you go. Sorry, I'll start again.
No, they had some good tunes, those guys.
Yeah, well, their song. Oh, good. Now the cameras are on me. I'm gonna freaking forget it. 100 year. Oh yeah, because we've only got 100 years left. That was actually my brother's wedding song.
Yeah. Very, very nice pop songs.
Yeah.
Great.
But anyway, yeah.
So what did they say?
Well, he told me when I asked him, he told me that he doesn't really get nervous except for live shows because there's so much shit that can just go wrong. A light can fall.
Yeah.
There could be a dick in the audience screaming, heckling, So.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought that was kind of interesting. Figured I'd share that with you while I had you, right?
Yeah. Well, it is true that, a million things can go wrong on stage. I just a million. Yeah, I mean, a million things. And I mean, the more successful you are, the more you can kind of cover that sort of thing. And of course, you know, depends on who you're hiring to run the show. I mean, like for example, I've been at a lot of rock and roll shows because of my dad. I've been backstage at a lot of shows, not only his shows, but I toured with Van Halen with my dad. I've been, a zillion things, and I don't know of any operation that was of any comparable scale that was as sort of slick and dialed as the Taylor Swift operation. I mean,
Sure.
that thing, that entourage, the techs, the roadies, the musicians, the caterers, the security guys, it was like dialed. I mean, it was like masterfully organized, and it was pretty cool to see. Like there's like backups for everything, like not just one backup. There's like a plan B, a plan C, and a plan D, it's just like instantly ready to rock and roll, like ready to go. You break a string. I mean, like for example, you've got like just the, she had like I can't remember how many people in her band. One of the guys was a guitar player, was the main guy, so I borrowed his guitar for this show. And his guitar roadie had a little kind of miniature luthier's shop off the side of the stage. I mean, this wasn't just a rack with like 5 or 6 guitars hanging there or something. Like, this guy could have built a guitar. I mean, it was very kind of compactly laid out. But I mean, anything that could go wrong. In fact, during the sound check, I broke a string. We ran through that song at the sound check like 3 o'clock in the afternoon when the venue was empty, and I broke a string, and it was, I mean, the guy was there in like a second and a half or something. It was like I looked down and I was playing a new guitar. It was like magic.
Wow.
But yeah, a million things can go wrong. I mean, especially if you don't have the kind of budget to hire these organizational whizzes and security goons and stuff. Crack a few heads, because there's always there's like I don't know who you were talking to from Five for Fighting, but I shouldn't say there always is, but it's not uncommon for there to be a couple of guys that get out of control and they've been drinking and they want to show off for their lady.
Sure.
Or if you can believe it, they think that they're in competition with you for the attention of their lady. And of course, you don't know who they are. You don't even know they exist, and you don't know who their lady is. They're in a crowd. You don't
Right.
you can't even see anything. It's like light shining in your eyes. Like people don't understand. Like it's like, dude, I saw you checking out my girl, and it's like, are you kidding? I couldn't even see my own guitar, like blinded. Like eyes were like spotlights, like shining, lights in your eyes. So sometimes guys jump on stage, they try to pick a fight. So yeah, that kind of stuff can happen.
Wow, dude.
Or you just forget all of your lyrics, which
Sure.
has happened to me a few times.
One thing I wanted to ask you about, Tal, obviously the name Richard Marx will be familiar to you, I'm sure. And he actually had a vlog. In one of his vlogs, he said when he was stuck in the course of songwriting lyrically, he would read some of the great romanticist poets, like Pablo Neruda, for instance, for inspiration. Five for Fighting told me that he dug reading Stephen Sondheim lyrics and Dylan lyrics. I'm just curious, when
Okay.
when you're in the course of writing a song and you feel like you're stuck, is there any sources you turn to for inspiration?
Not, not quite like that. Um, I mean, what it is, okay, that brain froze for a second. I just um, okay. What I was trying to say is, okay, this is for like aspiring songwriters out there or whatever. To me, the thing is, and of course, people can be different. I mean, individuals can be different. But for me, the big thing here is that you want to have like an initial how do I put it? Like a fertilized egg or something. I mean, you want to have like the initial seed, the germ, as they might say. You want to have the initial idea, the spark of life,
Mm.
for what will become a song. Okay, so it's like the sperm penetrating an ovum or something like that. It's like Richard Attenborough, um, BBC Life or something. So that could be a little bit of melody.
Mm.
It could be a little guitar riff. It could be a little phrase. Oh man, that would be a great title. It would be even just a concept. You don't have a title, but you've kind of you thought about a certain kind of feeling that you had or a story that you might want to tell. Of course, not every song is a big story song. Often they're just about kind of capturing, like a snapshot, a cool moment, or there's some combination of that or something, or some kind of interesting dialogue or something. But um, so you want to get like that initial kind of seed that is almost just by virtue of coming into existence. It's already wanting to take you there. And so
Mm.
to me, that is the real. That's like once you have that, you're kind of off and running. And particularly if you can get a title with a concept attached to it, because you can come up with a little bit of melody, and then just rack your brains like what could I call this song? What could it be about? Boy loves girl, boy. Okay, well, I've done that a million times.
Right.
What about a guy that commits a murder? Okay, well, that's kind of dark. You just like sit there for like, okay, so particularly if you can get a title, and maybe that's where it will come in handy, dipping into Pablo Neruda and all these guys. I mean, I typically don't do that. I usually will try to play around with the musical idea, the melody idea, or the riff,
Mm.
and try to just kind of try to in a weird sort of way, try to hear the concept of the words that want to kind of emerge from it. And sometimes I'll kind of scat sing it, you kind of, and funnily enough, like a lot of times a phrase or a kind of enough of a lyrical motif to kind of that you can spin into something will just emerge. um, and so what I'm trying to say is, like, once you have that, so if you have a little bit of melody, and you've got a title, and you've got a concept that fits that title, like a story, like I said, or a snapshot in emotion or something, I feel like you're almost over the hill, like over the hump, right? And
Sure.
if you're good and you kind of try to calm yourself and hear that, the song, with luck, will almost kind of write itself. I mean, it doesn't really it doesn't really write itself, but it can feel easy, because even if you can't find the right words, you know where you're supposed to go. You should know where you're supposed to go,
You put on a
right? Like,
path, right?
because you already had that concept.
Yeah.
You're already on a path. It's like, well, I got to get to, well, out of a thousand different directions that I could go, I already kind of know that I've got to get here, and then I've got to get there, and then there's got to be a reconciliation between these two estranged lovers at the end of the song, because that's what my song is about, or whatever it is. So I mean, in addition to that, I mean, speaking of like kind of that craft part of it, is that, I mean, I almost kind of feel embarrassed talking about this, because most people won't have heard most of my songs. They'll only have heard like one. So, I'm talking like I know what I'm doing, um, you know, but people would have no necessary reason to believe I know what I'm talking about. If you, but anyway, just to complete the thought,
Yeah.
um, yeah, like there are other kind of things that you want to do along the way as you're trying to let that song kind of unfold itself to you, and kind of hear where that initial idea wants to go. And so sometimes that will mean kind of being conscious that it will really help paint that picture if, for example, you lay in a really specific image,
Mm.
if you use an interesting word or three, if you can use a word that you wouldn't normally hear in a song lyric, but which doesn't sound like some idiot out of insecurity put a fancy word into his song. It has to feel effortless and natural. That's one of the things that you hear, that you get from like the Stephen Sondheims, the Irving Berlins, the American, they call it the Great American Songbook guys, the
Mm-hmm.
Jerome Kerns, the Rogers and Hammerstein, all those guys. Is that you know there is almost a sense of inevitability when you hear that the end of that line, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when you first hear some of these great, say Broadway classics or something, um, the end of the line will take you by surprise, but the moment you hear it, you're like, oh man, that's the only thing it could have ever been. And who would have ever thought about mentioning like, a train car in that line, or rhyming this word steamroller with that thing, or there was a little pun or something fun. So so you can be aware of that kind of stuff, and that helps punch up a lyric. Um, and why punch up a lyric? Because you're really trying to create through your lyrics, through your melody, through your chords, through your the dynamics of your song, through the song structure, through that whole thing, a kind of like spell,
Mm.
a kind of enchantment or something that kind of creates a really amazing connective experience with your listeners. It's between listeners, it's within the listener, it's between you and the listener. So a kind of bond emerges. So there's almost something in a great song, performed really well. There's almost kind of something shamanic about it, right?
Sure.
And so that's what it's all about. And yeah, so I'm not disagreeing with anything that these guys said. It's kind of the same idea. Um, and I tend to go about it a slightly different way.
No, that's awesome, man. No, thank you. Yeah, let me see. One other regret that I had last time we chatted, Tal, is I never got the chance to ask you about the great Bob Rock.
Okay.
Yeah, so for our audience, on your first album, self-titled Tal Bachman, you worked with the legendary sound engineer and record producer Bob Rock, who has worked with everyone, right? I mean, Bon Jovi, Bryan Adams, who I know you used to open for, Aerosmith, Metallica, the who's who, right? And I got to know what it was like meeting and working with him. Would you mind telling me?
He was um, grounded,
Mm.
uh, you know, like not a flighty, hyperactive guy. There's all different kinds of producers, right? In case your audience doesn't know, I mean, a producer on an album producer, is sort of equivalent to a movie director. So there's not one right way to direct a movie, and there's not one right way to produce a record. So there's all different kinds of producers that have different sorts of styles. Um, I was looking for a certain kind of producer in particular. I mean, initially I kind of wanted to just produce it myself because I had played everything on my demos, but that was never going to happen with a debut album with a brand new artist on Columbia Records. Right? That would have been a very high risk thing for them to do. I mean, I would have had to have completed the album ahead of time and then shot an entire album and gotten it picked up by Columbia, like Led Zeppelin. That's what they did, for them to ever accept that. And I didn't have the money to do that at the time. So I wound up having to find a producer. So I met with tons of guys, very well known, very successful producers. And, it's a funny thing. Like, if you were an aspiring musician and somebody had said, what if I told you that you could have the opportunity to work with this guy? And he sold like 40 million records with these 10 different bands. And you'd be like, oh man, like, yeah, I'd sell my own grandmother into slavery to work with a guy like that. Hell yeah, of course. Yeah, give me that money.
Hell yeah.
You just go crazy. Um, but then once you get your deal and you're like, oh, wow, this is like, now I've got my deal and this is real, and I really want to create a very specific kind of album, for better or for worse. You've got your plan, you've got your vision. All of a sudden, I became sort of, very, uh, cautious, careful. I looked real. I thought, I approached it very critically. Like, who was the right guy? I mean, who knows? I might not even get to make another record after this. Maybe this was my only shot with Columbia. Who knows? So I was really careful about all of that stuff and met with lots of really great fellas, very nice guys, like really good at their jobs. But it's kind of like it's kind of like meeting a life partner or something. You can meet 1,000 great gals, but they're not necessarily a great you know romantic match for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I met with Bob. Like I said, he was stable, kind of centered, very, you know, he didn't seem like he was trying to say all the right things. It didn't seem like any kind of act, but he said all of the right things. So it was I wanted to make a very kind of song-driven album as opposed to a kind of a very like an album that had a uniform style
Mm.
or an album that was about a certain kind of attitude or a certain kind of look. And I also wanted it to be varied because nobody was doing albums like that that I knew of in that kind of pop rock realm at the time. I kept listening to records that had spawned hits, and they were very samey. You had like 10, 12 songs. Maybe the songs were great, but they all kind of sounded the same. And my heroes were, I loved the Beatles, I loved Queen, I loved Led Zeppelin, even ELO, which I really liked when I was a little kid. They would sometimes have comedy songs, like fun, slightly funny. Certainly Queen and the Beatles,
Sure.
they actually had full on comedy and novelty songs, and on the same album. I mean, like you listen to Revolver, the Beatles. There's like that, acid rock. There's kind of an Indian thing. There's full on power pop. There's a beautiful little love song. There's everything, and yet to me, it just all sounded great. It didn't sound like multiple personality disorder or something. And same with the Queen songs, same with the Queen albums. Like A Night at the Opera. It has Bohemian Rhapsody. It has a progressive rock song on it, the Prophet song. It's got a ukulele number called Good Company. It's got Seaside Rendezvous, which is like a little comedy novelty song. It's got like the ultimate sort of gay hissy fit rock song. It's like the greatest song of its kind in the rock and roll canon. There's a song called Death on Two Legs, where Freddie Mercury, it's just this homicidal rage at their manager. He wrote it about their first manager.
Huh.
So it's this friggin' awesome, robust, multifaceted thing, and no one's doing it. And I wanted to make that kind of record. And so I talked to Bob. He said, that sounds great. Yeah, we can do that. It's got to be about the songs. I said, of course it does. And I mean, at the time I was like, I don't care about attitude, and I just want to do a record like this. And
Sure.
ideally we get a hit or three off of it. And so I just instantly felt that kind of confidence that he got it, and that also that he wasn't going to try to kind of deter me from that vision out of a need to kind of impose himself out of a prior need, like out of a prior insecurity.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Like, because if a song's done, it's done. If you've arranged it, if it's not done, that's great, no problem. And you want your producer to say, hey, you know what, let me know if there's like a leak. It's just like military helicopters or something. They're probably tracking me for this surveillance.
Are they coming to take your away, Tal?
Well, I don't know what they're doing. Sometimes I wonder. Anyway, where was I? Yeah. He just seemed to get it, and I felt confident that he wasn't going to try to change around a song I had written just to change it. Because I would have just gone crazy. But I friggin' hate. It's, and that kind of thing is so common in every aspect of the entertainment biz. because like 99.9% of these people have no friggin' clue. I'm not saying they're not talented in their own way, but they don't know what's good or bad. They don't know what's going to hit commercially or not. They can't sort of sense it. They don't have the confidence to kind of say, hey, you know what? Normally we do A, B, and C, but you brought me a product. We should just put it out the way it is right now because it's just there. They don't have that. This is why, like traditionally in Hollywood, this is going to be like 3 podcasts, the length of this. Like, how long have we been going? We're like going on an hour already.
Oh wow!
You're
How
in
about
like
that?
3 questions already. Like in Hollywood, traditionally, like like you could have been like God Himself could have written a movie script. It could have been like the ultimate perfect movie script, and dropped it onto the desk of one of these, maybe not the old time movie moguls. The who am I thinking of? Samuel Goldwyn and these guys.
Oh yeah.
I don't know about them. But certainly the guys in the 80s and the 90s, whatever. You could drop it on their desk, and wouldn't have mattered. God Himself could be standing there in a robe saying, "This is the perfect screenplay," and the movie exec would have been like, "Okay, great, thank you, God. Okay, you know what? We're going to bring in." I know a great guy. He's an up-and-coming screenwriter. We're going to get him to punch this thing up. We're going to get, and you know what? We're also going to send it over to this other guy because they got to get like 3 or 4 other guys on it to cover their asses just in case it doesn't hit, because they don't know if it's good or not. They have no
Sure.
idea. All they know is that they're kind of operating on this plywood theory. Like if we just keep, it works with plywood. I don't know if it works with movie scripts or songs, right? If we just kind of keep layering all these kind of different things onto this script, well, if we get if we run this script through, I'm totally off on a tangent right now. If we run this script past 4 different screenwriters, okay, I'm preaching the gospel right here. If we run this movie script or song, I'm like back to the thing, but like through 4 different guys, like the A&R guy, and then the A&R guy's assistant, and then the A&R guy's assistant's brand new secretary, Jenna. She's only 19 and she just like showed up here to do a summer internship, and she's really got her ear to the ground, and we'll get all of her feedback, and then we'll also play it for the president of the company and this other guy, and we'll get all of their feedback somehow. This is going to make the song 6 times better because 6 new people will all have like thrown their 2 cents. But guess what happens? Well, we all know what happens. It's like these guys, they're like dogs with the fire hydrant, right? They can't, an unneutered dog can't walk past a fire hydrant without peeing on it just because he hasn't peed on it yet. That's the only thing that matters to these guys, is to just kind of like put their own stamp on it so that they can tell their mistress or their wife or whatever, yeah, that's the part that I put in. Or they can tell everybody in the company. So I didn't want to deal with this just insane, the egos and the insecurities and stuff, even though I was myself like, I'm a brand new signing.
Sure.
All I wanted to do was, here's another thing I just remembered. I had a zillion songs, most of which I had written myself, but I had a few songs that were co-writes. I'd been able to co-write a couple along the way. So I figured that I could do a 12-song album, and I would maybe have like 3 of them could be co-writes. But do you know that as soon as I got my record deal, so I get signed because of a song that I wrote myself, If You Sleep, but no sooner do I get signed than these guys do the exact same thing with the songs that are going to be on the album. Like, okay, which is, you know what? We want to put you together with these songwriters, and we want you to go to Nashville. We want you to go to L.A. We got great guys in New York City. I mean, these guys have had 1 million hits. Okay, we're going to put you with this guy, that guy, this guy, this guy, that guy. Okay, it's going to be great. And you can write your whole album with these guys, because why? Because it's all cover your ass, right? Because, they don't know it's good. I mean, I already had She's So High. I already had like songs that, I'd written myself. They didn't quite know. So I nixed that. And I didn't want anything like that to happen on the production side where you're documenting your songs in the studio. And I really felt that Bob was not going to do that. And, he never, ever did do that. He was really, really good. He made really valuable suggestions, and he was a kind of force for solidity in and I almost want to say kind of like a foundational girth to the songs.
Sure.
Like they sounded substantial, and some of that was like sonic tricks, not tricks, techniques, sonic techniques. How are you EQing it? How are you compressing it? How are you mixing it? Bob and I mixed the album together, so that was a big thrill for me. But of course, oh, the other part of it is like, I mean, it's everything. It's tempo. It's your dynamics. It's what are the instruments that you're using, through what amps, through what effects, and how is it all blending together. So in the end, it, that record for Columbia, which came out, it feels like a million years ago now. um, for better or for worse, was, I mean, it was the kind of album that I'd wanted to make, and we made it. So that's pretty cool.
That is awesome, man. Tal Bachman opens up. Got to learn to open up a little bit more, right, Tal? Um, cool, man. Well, hey, I know we're coming up on our time. I have just I got actually. You know what? Two questions left, if that's all right, bud.
Yeah, no worries.
Awesome, thanks, man. So, how would you assess the current musical landscape? I mean, for me, I'm finding myself to become more and more of an Ed Sheeran fan. Love Ed Sheeran. I can actually play a few of his songs on guitar, if you can imagine.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks. Is there anyone in particular that you have an affinity for that you like?
Well, Ed Sheeran's a very talented guy. I mean, yeah, he's a top class songwriter, obviously. Are you there? I just lost your video.
Oh, yep, I'm here. Mark's doing a quick battery. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, just keep going.
Yeah, but as for, I mean, there's lots of people out there that I respect, but it's not like my life has been changed by any kind of contemporary artist, to be honest. Like anyone that I can think of. So, yeah, I mean, it's not like I don't like music or anything. It's just that I typically don't hear songs that really resonate with me on the radio.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I don't know about anyone else, but I mean, I could barely stomach watching the Grammys.
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, I mean, it was it's like just unwatchable. What happened to this thing? So I sound like an angry man. I mean, I listen to a lot of music. It's just not a lot of contemporary stuff.
Sure.
I've been listening to a lot of old bossa nova, for example. And, that really resonates with me.
Good stuff, man. No, thank you. Let me see. Well, I think, Tal, you know what? I am going to ask this. I meant to ask you last time, and you'll love this. A few of our commenters from our last interview wanted me to ask you this. What the heck are you drinking?
This?
Yeah. Oh, is this
This
water?
is this is water.
Gotcha.
Okay.
All right. It's
So
like this
it's
stuff,
not
right?
vodka or moonshine. But I have no idea what I was drinking last time.
Yeah. One of the commenters was like, "Why is he drinking antifreeze?"
What color was it?
Green, but I think it may have been your cup, actually. Sorry, might be an intensely boring discussion for our
I
listeners.
don't know. I don't know what that would have been. It might have been an exotic vegetable concoction of some kind or something. I don't know what it would have been. I don't know.
Well, hey, we'll
Whatever.
leave. Yeah, exactly. We'll leave it a mystery. Okay, two questions left, sir, and then I promise I'll quit bugging you. So, all kidding aside, one question that did come up quite a bit that people wanted me to ask if I had the pleasure of chatting with you again, bud, was let's see. I'll read the listener's comment and I'll just kick it over to you for your thoughts. Has Tal ever gone into any detail about why he stopped putting out records after 2004?
Well, I don't think I have, but I didn't have a record deal. Thanks for bringing that up, questioner. Yeah, thanks for reminding me. I didn't have a record deal, and I didn't have like $150,000 lying around because by then I had reproduced. I had even more children, um, and then by the late 2000s, I was going. I nah. And long story short is I left. I had to get a divorce.
Gotcha.
So that didn't help. No, but I mean, I didn't have 150 G's lying around, and I didn't have a record deal, and no one seemed like they wanted to sign me. So I was lucky that I was able to live and live pretty well off of my She's So High royalties. One thing that helped with that was the guy that covered it in Europe.
Kurt Nilsson.
Kurt Nilsson.
Yeah, I remember we talked about him last
Thank
time.
you, Kurt. Thank you, Kurt, for the extra kick of royalties. Because I mean, my royalties spiked, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh crap. And then he covered that song, and the European royalties are like twice what the North American ones are for like per radio play.
Wow.
So that was pretty good, and that extra cover actually kind of kicked it into like a category of song that I mean, that cover, which only happened like a few years after, so like 2, 3, 4 years after it kind of came out.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is, kicked it into a realm where it kind of never left the atmosphere. It just kept getting plugged into ads and movies, and it got played on stations still. I mean, it still gets played.
Sure.
Quite often. And it was on the Peloton ad last year, whenever that was. And so all of those things generate money. So I was lucky in that way, but didn't generate enough to, I mean, I have to hire an engineer. I don't know how to run any of the gear. My brain's not really wired that way. I can play everything and write everything, so I just, that's why.
Right on, man.
So if anyone has like 150 grand, I'll do a new record. You just never know.
Hey,
There's probably some 20-year-old kid that just sold his business for like $8 million or something.
well, sure. I mean, there are 12-year-old YouTubers making $1 million a month.
Yeah,
It's
good
wild.
for them.
Yeah, I know, right? All right. Awesome, Tal. Well, I wanted to thank you once again for joining me. It was such a pleasure as it was last time. Hopefully we can do it again sometime. And Tal, just to cap us off, I'm going to ask the question, how can people find out about you, my friend?
Well, I guess I should really go look at my Wikipedia page, because I feel embarrassed every time I think about. I mean, it would take me 0.2 of a second to go click on that thing, and I feel embarrassed every time and I never do it. I haven't looked at that page in over 10 years. And the last time I looked at it, it had all kinds of weird stuff on it that was not even true. Like this is like 10 years ago or something. I looked at it, and somebody had authoritatively written that I'd recorded the She's So High video in Alberta, in Canada, and all kinds of stuff, and it's all fake. So I should probably go update that. Although, even as I'm saying it, I feel embarrassed about it, because have you ever gone onto like somebody's Wikipedia page and you can tell that they've written it about themselves?
Yeah, I have.
You can't hide it, right?
Right.
And it's so embarrassing. I'm like, God, this guy obviously wrote his own Wikipedia page about how awesome he was and how he was like a pioneer in his field or whatever, like this total thing. But anyway,
Right.
so I guess I should go do that, and in the unlikely event anyone wants to like learn about me, or you can just go, I guess, on Facebook or something. I mean, I have a Twitter account, but nothing that I think of, as you can guess from this very podcast, fits into 240 characters. I need more space. So I guess I don't even know. I don't even know how to answer that question. I mean, Facebook maybe.
Voila. Facebook works.
But beware. You don't necessarily want to get that close to people you don't necessarily want to get to know somebody that you admire, like they wrote a
Oh,
book you admire
never meet your
or a
heroes
song
kind
you
of thing.
admire. I mean, well, there is something to that, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so, you know, it might ruin the experience. Getting to know me more might ruin the experience of listening to the songs that are still out there. But who
Sure.
knows? Anyway,
Hey,
if you dare.
if you dare, Google and Facebook Tal Bachman. All right, my friend. Hey, it was a real pleasure seeing you again. Hopefully, I can bring you back if you're ever interested. And yeah, man, I hope you stay safe out there and best of luck with everything.
Okay, cool. Thanks a lot.
All right, Tal. Take care.
All right. See ya.